We all know people dumber and lazier than us making 10 times more than we are. So what gives? I thought business was all about rolling up your sleeves and outworking everybody else. Well, after generating almost $30 million online, I can tell you that that is definitely not the case. First, I'm going to tell you the story of when it became abundantly clear that hard work gets you nowhere. Then I'm going to explain to you what you need instead of hard work. And finally, I'm going to show you how you can get it so that you can work less and make more than you are right now. The year is 2018. I had recently decided to throw away my lifelong dream of becoming a lawyer in order to start this weird internet business called a social media marketing agency. I was working as a waiter, earning about $2,000 a month, and spending every waking second I had cold calling and cold emailing businesses trying to convince them to buy my services. I was listening to gurus like Grant Cardone who told me that it was just a numbers game, that all I had to do was do more today than I did the day before, and eventually I would be successful. Well, after about 9 months of work and only $3,000 to show for it, I realized that this was the wrong way. At this point, I was further in debt than when I had started, and I was literally banging my head against the wall every single day with no hopes of actually making this successful. As an absolute last-ditch attempt, I paid a few $1,000s to go to a mastermind in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was here that I realized that hard work gets you nowhere. Because as I walk into this room of other entrepreneurs trying to grow a social media marketing agency, I started speaking to guys and girls that were doing $100,000 a month, to $200,000 a month, even $500,000 a month. And what I realized when I talked to these people was that they weren't that smart. Actually, if I can say this with a slight bit of hubris, I felt that I was way smarter than them. Remember, I was pre-law. I had spent my entire life studying to be a lawyer. I got into one of the top law schools in the nation. And here I was talking to what was essentially a bunch of high school or college dropouts that mastered this online internet thing and were making millions of dollars a year in profit. Even weirder than that was that they were literally on year-long tours around the world. They were living in Colombia, and they were living in Europe, and they were living in Southeast Asia. And here I was still in my dad's basement working as a waiter, working 60 hours a week, barely making $2 an hour. So once I learned what they had that I didn't, which I'm about to show you, I hit my first $10,000 month in 30 days. I hit my first $100,000 month shortly after that. And then a few years after that, we hit our first $1 million month. The best part, I work way less than I did then. I actually spend the majority of my time doing things outside of business. For example, I got my pilot's license and bought a plane, ended up flying it across the entire country. I go on dozens of trips a year with my friends and family to places like China or Dubai or safaris in Africa. I bought a motorcycle. I bought a boat. I host huge masterminds for entrepreneurs just for the fun of it. And this means that I have actually gotten what I ended up wanting in the first place, but I did the exact opposite of what everybody else was telling me at the time. So what is this one thing that you need that everybody else seems to have? Well, my friends, it's called leverage. Now, before you hop off here and you think, oh, I already know what leverage is, I'm not going to watch this, be sure to stick around until the end because I'm going to walk you through every single example of leverage that took me from literally zero to almost $30 million in sales in a few years. And I'm going to end it with the number one form of leverage I think everybody should have in today's business landscape. Now, if you don't know what leverage is, it's very simple. It's essentially getting more out of what you put in. So for example, if I were to put $1 in, I would get $10 out. The problem is that what most people talk about when there's a numbers game or when they're saying work really hard is that they're talking about stuff that has absolutely no leverage. They're doing 100 times the activity to get 100 times the result. Or a lot of times, if you were looking at what I was doing, they're doing 100 times the activity to get 1 time or 2 times the results. And that's what I felt like I was doing. I was working harder than everybody that I knew, yet I was still earning less than everyone that I knew. And that was because I didn't fully understand what leverage was. And every single time in my life, I find myself stuck either in my professional or my personal life at a revenue level, or I feel stressed out. It's almost always because I'm not applying the next level of leverage. Now, if you don't believe me, there is one of the most famous investors of all time called Naval Ravikant, and he actually breaks down leverage even more in detail than I does. And he also says it's the most important thing you need to increase your earning potential. Now, he breaks it down into 4 main sections. The 4 types of leverage are labor, capital, code, and media. And let me break this down for you before I get into the examples. So labor is going to be me paying somebody to do a job. So me paying an employee, me paying a salesperson, me paying somebody to hang paintings in my room. This is going to give me back my time, and maybe I can then make more money, or in the example of a salesperson, I pay a salesperson and they make me more money than I'm paying them. Then you have capital. Capital is going to be whenever you are spending money to make money. A great example of this is if you invest in the S&P 500, or if you have like some kind of private equity firm or some kind of hedge fund where people are paying you money to essentially you turn that money into more money. Real estate is another great example of that. And then there's code. Code is going to be software, right? Your favorite software companies out there, they're using one of the highest forms of leverage possible because they can build one software, a few lines of code one time, and have tens of millions of users use it without really that much additional work. And then you have media, and media is essentially content, right? This is what you're watching right now. This is the social media, personal brands, what everybody's talking about right now. Now, what Naval talks about is the lowest form of leverage is going to be capital and labor, because these are kind of more of like the Industrial Revolution when you were, Henry Ford was paying these people to create some kind of assembly line to build these cars. And so, yeah, he was making some money, but he still had to have a bunch of employees and a bunch of headache. The same thing with capital. With capital, you have to go out and get people's permission to take their money and then go invest it. You got to manage all of this stuff. And so that's why he calls them permission leverage. To get someone to work with you or to get someone to invest money with you, you have to go out and ask people's permission. The reason why he talks about code and media being the highest forms of leverage is because they are what's known as permissionless. I could create a software today without talking to anybody, and I could have tens of millions of people use it with also not talking to anybody or getting anybody's permission. They're just buying it because they want to. The same thing with media. I'm sitting here in my office on a Wednesday morning. I haven't talked to anybody yet. I just sat down, I'm shooting this video, and hopefully thousands of people are going to see this video. So I'm putting 1 hour of time into making this video, and I'm going to get, let's say, tens of thousands of views, hopefully on this video, and eventually tens of thousands of dollars that come in as a result. And so whenever we're looking at applying leverages in these coming examples, you need to think, which form of leverage is this? Because I employ all four of them. And then you have to ask yourself, maybe you're so focused on the lowest forms of leverage, like labor, you're saying, oh, I have this big, huge team and I'm really impressive because of that. When really you should be looking at, okay, how do I make it a disgusting amount of money in a short amount of time? It's going to be through the higher forms of leverage like code and media. So now that you understand a bit more about leverage, let me actually walk through almost every single form of leverage that I've applied, all the way from zero to almost $30 million online. So the first is actually going to be a little basic, but pretty important because I see a lot of people still miss this. So when I was first starting my social media marketing agency, I actually went to the restaurant that I was working at in Atlanta, Georgia, and I asked them to, if I could run ads for them. Now they said, I'll do it on a free trial basis. And I said, sure, because they were going to be essentially what my first client was. And so I was creating social media posts. I was adjusting the website. I was creating email sequences, and I was creating advertising campaigns to fill out the restaurant. The bonus was also I would work those nights that I filled the restaurant out, so I could also make a little additional money. So here's an example of one of the ads that I ran for them, which was a white truffle dinner that they did because it was an Italian restaurant. And so we would run it in the local area, people that liked Italian food, and they would come in, they would say a specific code, and they got some kind of discount. And it worked really well. And I remember there was one campaign we ran because they were in like the commercial area of Atlanta, Georgia, near some of the largest headquarters, I think like UPS and Coca-Cola, stuff like that. And we ran a special $5 happy hour martini, where if they came in and they showed their employee badge, they would get a $5, their first martini was $5. And we packed the house whenever we ran this ad because people were coming in from the local area and they wanted obviously cheap martinis. And I was thinking, oh my God, I did it. I'm a successful advertiser. I brought them, a few of these additional clients they didn't have previously. And over the lifetime, they're going to spend a few $100s with them. And so they want to pay me money. So I remember going to the owners of the restaurant. I sat down in the back office and I said, it was a success. I'm so excited. And they said, yeah, really great job. So how much do you regularly charge? And I just went with what the course I bought was telling me at the time. And I said, it's going to be $2,000 a month. And I still remember to this day, their jaw dropping. So $2,000 a month? I said, yeah. They said, That's way too much money. Do you understand how much we make per customer? And it was then that I realized that I was going to charge $2,000 for these restaurants who were only going to make upfront maybe a few hundred additional dollars. So every month they were going to be in the red. They were going to be behind paying me my services. And this was my first example of leverage, because I realized that, okay, I put a lot of time, energy, and effort into this campaign and working for this restaurant. And let's say, for example, I put 10 units of energy in, but I only got, let's say, 3 units of energy out, because for them, they weren't getting a huge return on investment. So it was going to be really hard for me to convince restaurants all over the nation to pay me $2,000 and, God forbid, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month to run ads for them if they were getting barely any return upfront to their investment. And so what I then realized was like, okay, well, what if I could take the same 10 unit of energy that I was putting in, and I could find somebody who it would actually end up being 100 essentially results, 100 times the results of what I put in there. And so what I decided to do was I started thinking, who makes an obscene amount of money that I know? And at the time, one of the areas that I lived is called Seaside, Florida, and almost every person there is a real estate agent. And so my mom introduced me, I still remember her name, Jody, to this day, as a real estate agent down there. And Jody was earning millions of dollars a year in commissions selling homes that were worth $5 to $15 million. And so what I learned was, okay, well, if a home's worth $1 million and I get them one sale for my advertising services, they could pay me, let's say, $2,000, and I could essentially make them $30,000, which is obviously a 15x. That's a form of leverage. And so who I chose as the market that I wanted to eventually run the ads for became a massive reason that I was able to start making more money than what I was doing previously, because I went all in on real estate agents. I remember Jody, when I went to her office, remember at the previous time I had been pitching all these restaurants and they were all saying no, no, no. And I went to Jody and I remember creating this whole proposal, and I was so excited. I was sweating. I had this full documentation. I go in her office. I start talking. She's like, stop. Like, how much is it going to be a month? And at the time, I was like, you know what, whatever. I'm just going to throw out a number. And I said $3,000. And she said, great. Do you take checks? And I was like, immediately, I was like, oh my God. I literally was trying so hard previously to these restaurants, and here I was, I just told this person $3,000, and it was a no-brainer to them because she was selling homes for $3 million, $5 million, so she could sell one home and make $100,000 on the $3,000 investment, and that's exactly what ended up happening. I ended up scaling the inside the real estate niche because I knew that I could put in 10 units of energy and get 100 out. Now, this wasn't the only thing that I learned for leverage in my first advertising agency, my first business. The second was employees, going back to labor. So I started working with all these real estate agents, and things are going pretty well, right? I'm making a little bit of money, but the problem here is that I was on what I like to call now the revenue roller coaster. So I would do a lot of prospecting. I'd sign a client, and then I'd do a lot of fulfillment, and then the client would leave for whatever reason. I do a lot of prospecting, sign a client, then I would do a lot of fulfillment, and then I would leave. And so this was essentially what my life was. So sure, I was definitely earning more than I was previously, but I didn't have a lot of leverage because every month I could make $10,000 or I can make $2,000, just depending on what was going on. So I felt like I was constantly putting out fires. And that was at the time I started hearing of virtual assistants overseas. And I didn't have a whole lot of money at that time, but I did realize that in order to get back some of my time, I needed to hire some employees. So I couldn't afford someone that was like $4 or $5 or $6 or $8,000, even where I have some people salaried right now making $300,000 plus a year. That was an insane concept to me. And so I heard of virtual assistants where I could pay somebody roughly $3 an hour, which was very competitive at the time for people in the Philippines. I could pay someone that they'd be happy to make that amount of money, and they could get me back 40 to 50 hours a week. And what did I have this person focus on? Straight up, full-time client acquisition. All they did was cold email real estate agents, sending them case study videos of me showing results for the other real estate agents that I had and getting them booked on my calendar. So I went from this kind of revenue roller coaster to this slow growth up and to the right for my business, because now whether I worked or I didn't work, I was having somebody full-time put appointments on my calendar, and we were getting like 4, 5, 6 appointments on my calendar every single day because she was sending out 3,000 to 5,000 emails a day, 7 days a week. She was a workhorse, and actually I still have Mel Jane in my company working with us today. So that was my next example of leverage, right? I could pay Mel Jane $3 an hour and she could bring me in legitimately $20,000 in business that month. So that was another really beautiful form of leverage, was hiring somebody and having them get me a disgusting return on my investment. Now, that wasn't all. As I started to get a little bit more business savvy, I realized that although we were starting to sign a lot of clients, I was almost in a revolving door, meaning that I would have new clients come in, and then within, let's say, 2 to 3 months, I would have clients leave, right? It was just this revolving door. And it was kind of exhausting, if I'm being honest with you, because I just felt like I was always essentially replenishing like an emptying ship. It's like if you have a ship and it's sinking and there's like a hole in the water and you just keep on bucketing out all the water instead of actually plugging the hole. That's what I felt like. Once again, I'm making money. Okay, so I'm not upset at this time, but I realize that in order to get to the next level, I need to plug some of these holes. I need to get back some of my time. I need to get more out of my input than I was previously. So what did I do? Well, I started doing some research online, and I figured that, okay, the clients, the agents that I worked with that were seeing the results, that had stayed with me for 4, 5, 6, 7 months, like Jody, what did they have that these people that are leaving after 2 months didn't have? And what I figured out was they all had a team underneath them that was calling those leads to work them in order to turn them into leads, or in order to turn them into qualified calls and showings for the agents. And that's when it hit me like a light bulb. I was like, oh my God, the problem is not that these leads are bad. It's that these brokers or these agents aren't actually calling them enough to turn them into listings or showings. And so I had two options at this point. I could say, okay, I only want to work with people who already have some kind of call center team in place to call these leads, but that's going to really drastically make my market narrower. So instead, I said, well, what if I was able to call, text, and emails these leads for my real estate agents? And in that example, I could get them more listings and showings, and thus they'd stay with me longer because they'd actually be making sales. And so this is where we came up with what at the time I called my commissions on demand system, where the company was called Prospect Social, we would literally, as soon as a lead comes in, we would call, text, and email these leads 12 times within 5 days, something like that, in order to, average contact is 10. 12 times in 5 days in order to set them on the calendar. And we were getting to them within less than 5 minutes, and 100% of the leads had a response. And this screenshot here is actually from my pitch deck. And so I was showing them before, the average number of leads you'd get is 7. With us, you'd get 100. Before, the average real estate response time for a lead online is 3 hours and 8 minutes. We'd have less than 5 minutes. Before, the leads who received a response were about 55%. We do 100%. And the average contact points is 1.3, and we do 10. So it's a 300% increase in conversion rates. So this was a beautiful form of leverage for two reasons. Number one, it stopped this revolving door. And so just by paying about $500 a month additionally for this call center, I could get a client to stay with me on average for 3 months longer. And at the time, I was charging $2,500 a month. So I was making an additional $7,500 with about, let's say, $1,500 in an investment for the call center. So I was netting whatever that is, $5,000, $6,000 in additional profit just by adding this small form of leverage, which was this call center. But that wasn't the best thing that happened. The other thing that happened was that people that we were selling, we started closing more deals. Our close rate went from like 12%, which is kind of standard when you're doing cold emailing and outbounding, and it went all the way up to 35%. Why? Because it was way easier to sell somebody, hey, not only are we going to generate all these leads for you, but we are going to call, text, and email these leads and set them on your calendar, which at the time, remember, this is around 2018, 2019, was totally revolutionary. Zillow, none of these other companies were doing it. We were the only real estate advertising agency that I know of that was actually offering a call center. Now it's pretty standard practice, but back then it was really unique and really helpful. And so the business exploded almost overnight. We started generating over $100,000 a month because we were closing more deals and people were staying with us longer. So that's the next form of leverage. But we're not done yet with the lessons from my first business, the advertising agency. The next thing I started noticing was, okay, cool. Obviously, if I can start closing more deals, having a higher close percentage, and they can stay longer, that's really what I want to do. Because now I can put in, just as examples once again, 5 units of energy every single month, and I can start getting 100 units back out again. That's where I started getting. I was like, oh my God, how can I get it to eventually I wanted to put 1 unit in and get 5,000 units out. I started to become a little bit obsessive with getting the most out of everything that I did. And what I realized was, once again, in when I audited the clients. So we took them from, let's say, 2 months on average of staying with me to then, let's say, we took them to about 5 months to staying with me. But at this point, I'd been in business, let's say, for about a year. And so I had even more data. And I was trying to see, there was like a handful of clients that had been with me for 12 months. So I was asking myself, okay, well, what could I do to have every client stay with me for 12 months? And I said, well, let's do the same thing I did last time with me looking at the leads that were staying a little bit longer, and let's see who the clients are staying with me for 12 months. And the number one thing that every single one of these clients had was that they were already investing money into other lead generation sources. So they're already spending money on Zillow, Realtor.com, TV, newspaper, radio, direct mail, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that this was important because it meant two things. One, that they weren't afraid to spend money to make money, right? It's a way easier to work with somebody who's not afraid to spend money to make money. They understand the speed at which is required to scale a business, and so they're not afraid to spend $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, where you go to somebody who's never invested in ads in their life, and they're like begging for a lead to come in the next day, and they're afraid that they just wasted all their money. The second thing was that they were probably better at handling colder leads than some of these other people. I'd say the vast majority of real estate agents rely on what's known as SOI, or sphere of influence, word of mouth, just friends and family and people that they've met, and introductions from other people, referrals essentially. And so when they got this lead who was, we were still qualifying, but then when they get on the call with them and they weren't like buying a home within 10 minutes, they'd be like, oh, these leads are crap. Versus people who were already running ads on Zillow and Realtor.com, they knew that that online leads take a little bit longer, but man, are they going to be way more scalable to do. So I added this in my video sales letter at the time. This is actually a slide from my video sales letter. And I said, great, this is only for you if you are currently running ads on all these different sites. And now we started getting brokers and team leaders, people who are willing to invest $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month on some of our upper end packages and stay way longer than everybody else. And once you get a client, the work that you have to do is always, like, let's say that this is a graph. Whenever you start to get a client, that's the most amount of work that you have to do. And over time, it literally just gets easier and easier because they already know how things work, especially in an advertising agency. And so I was getting to really capitalize on the huge profit and the huge leverage that came from working with a client for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Now, we're still not done yet with my lessons from my advertising agency. So what's another example of leverage that I did? Well, at this point, we had a team of virtual assistants, and they were doing cold emails every single day. But as more and more people kind of understood the power of cold email, and honestly, people started kind of using the same messaging that I was using, I started realizing that the cold email efficiency was going down, the leverage was going down. So previously, let's say if I was sending 1,000 cold emails, we might get, let's say, 10 booked calls. Now I would send 1,000 cold emails and we would get 5 booked calls, right? And so this is a really poor example of leverage because I'm doing a lot of energy here in order to get only 10 calls, and then it's actually going down. It's becoming worse. Then I'm doing the same amount of energy, it's getting even worse, right? It's on a decline. And so it was around this time that I started learning. I thought it was so funny looking back now, but I had spent at this point probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in ads for my clients, and I had never run an ad to acquire a client for myself. And I still remember I was on a call with a prospect and they said, well, like, you're not even running ads for you, so why are you trying to convince me to run ads for me? And that was when it hit me like, oh my God, why am I not running ads for myself? So I started running ads online, and this is one of my best performing ads. You can see this had 609 likes and 119 comments and 42 shares. This was a really kind of viral ad in the real estate niche. And it says Confessions of a Realtor. And I kind of walk through all these things that most real estate agents do. At this point, I had served, let's say, dozens, if not over 100 real estate agents. And so I could like speak to some of their pain points. And then I said, guys, it doesn't have to be that hard. Just book a call to speak with us down below and we'll be able to help you. And so this led to that video sales letter that I just talked about in the last presentation. And all of a sudden, I went from my VAs having to send thousands of emails a day to me having to spend about $50, and I would get one booked appointment that was worth to me around $300 at the time. So this was an example of really two forms of leverage. One is going to be a code, because Facebook's allowing me with just a few clicks of a button to run this ad versus like having to go do billboards in this huge advertising campaign. And the second is going to be capital. I was spending $50 and getting $300 back. So I was getting whatever that is, 6x return on my advertising spend. And this was the thing that then took us to the next level. I then applied leverage to my business again. Okay, instead of just doing this one-to-one, hand-to-hand combat, which is I send an email, I get a response. I send an email, I get a response. I send an email. I could have 10 VAs sending 10,000 emails, but it's still a really poor form of leverage. I'm starting to use some of the higher forms of leverage. If we go back to my image right here, I start to use some of the higher forms of leverage like capital, and code, right? I start to say, okay, now let me get out of this labor thing here, because there's only so much you can do with labor, and let me start to use some of the higher forms of leverage up here. So that ends up working incredibly well. This takes the business to the next level, and I'm running ads, and it goes viral, and we start to get so many sales calls that I legitimately can't take them myself, which brings me to the next form of leverage that I did, which was hiring my first salesperson. Her name was Jen. She was actually a real estate agent previously, so I think she might have even been a client. I don't remember. It was 2018, 2019. And so she crushed it. Actually, she was so good that I got another female salesperson that was also a real estate agent. Her name was Camille. And they both were getting on these calls, and I went from taking 8 to 10 calls a day, so 8 to 10 hours, to legitimately only doing 0 hours a day on sales calls, but I was still making $100,000 plus a month, right? Now, I was paying them 10%, so let's say I had to spend $10,000, so I went from spending time to money, but I was spending $10,000 to make $100,000, okay? So that, to me, was a good trade, okay? Because I could essentially... I started to realize more and more that the reason why most people get stuck is because they're afraid to spend money to make money. And so the only way I could reach the next level form of leverage was I had to start paying even more money. So remember, previously, the most amount of money I was paying was like $400 to $600 a month for a virtual assistant. And I went from that to spending like literally $6,000 in commissions for real estate agents or for my salespeople. So it was a huge swing overnight, but it was the right next step as far as leverage is concerned, because I could be lazy. I liked taking sales calls in the sense I liked making money. But man, if you're watching this video and you're still taking sales calls for your business, you can relate. That is a drag, 8 to 10 hours a day, every day. And then if you are tired, you go on vacation, all of a sudden your revenue goes down. So this was another huge unlock for me. And most people, once again, are afraid to spend, I don't want to pay someone 10%. I need that money. It's like, well, could I do something with an additional 8 to 10 hours a day, 40 to 60 hours a week that could make me more than that $10,000? You better believe it, Billy, okay? Because I am doing the same thing. I'm just going to keep on buying back my time and keep on leveraging up more and more. So then we started enrolling so many clients that I started having a hard time keeping up with fulfillment. So then I make my next hire, which is my media buyer, my campaign manager. So his name was Andrew. He is based out of India, and I was paying him $150 per client that he was managing. So remember, at this point, I was charging around $2,500. $500 went to ad spend. Then I had, let's say, $300 for a client, and then I had $150 for the media buyer / campaign manager, and then about $250 for the commission. So $2,500 minus $500 is $2,000, minus $300 is $1,700, minus $150 is $1,550, and then $1,550, I'm not that great at math, minus $250 is 0.05431 is about $1,300. So I ended up making about $1,300, if that math is right, in net profit. And at this point, remember, I am totally removed from, if you look at kind of a sales funnel here, I am totally removed from the marketing side because I'm running ads. I'm totally removed from the sales side because I am having a salesperson do it. And I am totally removed from the client fulfillment, client success side because I have my media buyer campaign manager. So at this point, I'm legitimately earning over $100,000 a month. And I am not kidding with you. I was working 4 to 8 hours a week. And remember, this is in stark contrast to what I was doing previously down here, where I was working 50, 60 hours a week, and I was making $3,000 in 9 months. I was earning $2 an hour in this example here, okay? So what was the difference between these two things here? And I'm not done, but what was the difference? I was adding leverage every single step of the way. I didn't get 100 times smarter. I didn't work 100 times harder. I just added a bunch of leverage. So going back to where we are right here, I'm earning over $100,000 a month. I have this real estate advertising agency. I ended up kind of reading the 4-hour work week and started traveling the world. I lived in Medellin, Colombia for a while. I lived in Europe for a while. Then I went across the United States and it ended up in San Diego, California. And things are going well, but I start to realize, okay, I'm kind of grinding for every one of these sales. Even though I'm making $1,300 for every single sale in profit, that's, if you look at the grand scheme of things, I was once again starting to get around people that were making $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for every client they were working with. And I realized, okay, there's another level. There's another form of leverage. And I still remember this date. I was on a call with one of my friends who at the time had bought that original social media marketing agency course with me. We had both started at the same time, except for here I was essentially living the dream of what that course had promised. I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars a year in profit. I was traveling the world, working only a few hours a week. And so we're like, dude, we both started at the same time, yet you're here and I'm still back here. Like, what did you do? And I was like, oh, I just kind of walked through everything I just did. I talked about here. I was like, well, if I paid you some money, could you show me? And I was like, he wasn't in a competing niche. He was serving medical spas. I was like, yeah, sure. I'll show you. No worries. And he was like, how much do you want one for it? I was like, I don't know, $5,000. And I remember this day, he PayPal'd me $5,000. And so literally in a 10-minute conversation, I had made $5,000. And what the unlock for me was that, number one, I think it was even more powerful through PayPal because there's no merchant processing fees. So 100% profit was the first one. It was almost 5 times what I had made profit-wise working with real estate agents whenever I closed a deal from them. It was 100 times easier. I just had a 10-minute conversation with them and they were going to pay me money. And it was going to be 100 times easier to fulfill because I didn't need a campaign manager and run all these ads and set up these advertising campaigns. I literally was just going to show him everything that I was doing, right? And that became essentially what coaching and consulting is for me today, but this was the first example of that. And so then when that happened, I still remember I was actually speaking in New Jersey at the time, and I was speaking at a real estate event there. I was speaking on stage. I get off stage and I open up my Facebook Messenger, which at the time I was using Facebook Messenger, LOL, who uses Facebook anymore, but I was using Facebook Messenger, and it was hundreds of DMs from people asking to work with me. I'm like, what is this from? I open up Facebook and I see that the guy that I had helped right here to make that gave me that $5,000, he posted in this Facebook group with, I think it was like 45,000 agency owners at the time, and said, I had been trying to get to $10,000 a month for 2 years now. Ravi helped me get it there in 14 days. And overnight, and I didn't ask him to do this, overnight, and I was like struggling to take all these sales calls and ended up literally exploding. It changed the trajectory of my entire life. And so then I realized, okay, there's another form of leverage here. It's not, even if we go back to what I said about real estate agents, where I was having real estate agent, they could spend $3,000 and potentially, let's say $100,000. Well, there's a few caveats to that, in that real estate, that's a really long sales cycle. They have to invest a lot of money into a lot of stuff. They have to go and drive back and forth and do all these complicated things. It could be 6 months until they see that $100,000, where if I was helping another agency, like that guy said, I took him from, let's say, $2,000 a month for 2 years to $10,000 in 14 days. So I realized there was another form of leverage where I could put the same amount of energy, actually way less work than I was doing previously, and make even more money. And that was where Scaling with Systems was born. And very quickly, we started scaling way past anything I ever did in the advertising agency, to where we hit $300,000 a month, then $400,000 a month, then $500,000, and then eventually my first $1 million month came from the company I have right now, which is Scaling with Systems. And once again, I'm not working 100 times harder. I'm working less than I was for the Ravi that was in the very beginning, making $2 an hour. And this is the company that I have today. But of course, in order to go to the next level, I'm still adding leverage to what I do. And so one of the things that we started doing was we started saying, okay, now we're starting to onboard new clients at a pretty rapid rate. So I took all the stuff I learned in my advertising agency and the lessons there, and I just copy and pasted it over into my new business, Scaling with Systems. So we ran ads, and I had a VA, day, and we started doing all these things. I had a sales team. But then it started becoming clear that one of the biggest bottlenecks in like more of the consulting world is fulfillment, right? Because most of the time what happens is if you're watching this video and you're a consultant or a coach or something like that, you're the brains behind the business. You're driving, you're the product. Your brain is the product that people are buying into. Well, the problem with that is I knew very quickly that as I was selling these people on these $5,000 packages left and right, yeah, you get a call with me, you get a call with me. All of a sudden, I started having to spend 50, 60, 70 hours a week working. And remember what I said previously, I had kind of unlocked this freedom, and I was right back to lowering my dollar per hour. I had almost no leverage. I was trading my time for money. Now, granted, I was probably making like $500 to $1,500 per hour if I had to calculate it out, but I still was trading my time for money. I didn't like that. And so I started to invest back into adding forms of leverage. And in the coaching consulting world, it's going to be in a client success team, right? And so this is something that I'm really, really proud of. And this is actually something that we help clients do in our back-end mastermind, is build this for themselves. But I started building essentially a team of, for lack of a better term, of mini Ravis, right? Of people that thought like me, who could see business like me, who would go through the same training that I did, who I would constantly train every single day. And we started standardizing and refining our processes, right? You might think that you're kind of some savant, right? That, oh, I just see this for this client and I know exactly what macro plan they need. I know exactly. And so you're using this as a crutch of why you can't ever hire somebody to help you with fulfillments, when in reality, you're just following some kind of logical sequence inside of your head that you can't put down on paper. Now, is it easy to do? No. But is it worth it? Absolutely. Because I started putting down what would eventually become known today as a theory of constraints, which is how we help our clients scale their business. I started putting that down on paper, and this is eventually what I'm going to have my book be about, of how we should scale this business. At this point, we've scaled over 2,000 businesses. We've generated close to $30 million and generated tens of millions for our clients. And so I created this standardized process. And in order to do this, I hired client success managers. We built a client success pipeline so we could see where clients were at what stage, and what their issues were, what their bottleneck was, and what the solution was going to be. We started standardizing the onboarding process because I identified that the majority of the time whenever we had unhappy clients, it was because it was the handoff between sales and client success. So I created a lucid chart around that, and I drilled it into my client success and sales team and created little forms and automation so that the client felt a very smooth transition from A to B, because that added more leverage, because a happy client is going to require way less work, and it would end with less refunds and chargebacks with us. So we really started, for lack of a better term, professionalizing this scaling with systems business. And this, I think, is what took us from earning like multiple seven figures to eight figures, is taking this next form of leverage. Another great example of leverage that I employ today is going to be building the team, right? So previously I was working really hard in the business, and I was like, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And I was the leader, right? And I was thinking, there's always this photo of, it's like in the Greek times, but there's this guy in the back sitting on like a throne of people, and he's whipping them, and it says, "This is not a leader." And instead, the next photo is a guy at the front of the pack leading the entire pack, and he says, "This is a leader." And in some ways that's true, but I feel like that's just really good for a meme. In reality, what you should do is you should be building up those people so they don't need you to be pulling them or pushing them. They're doing the work themselves. And that was the next unlock for me. And this is when I started hiring another layer of leadership. So instead of it just being me and the whole company, it started being me, a layer of leadership, and their direct reports. And so what I realized was that in order to build the company, I need to build the team, and the team builds the company. And that was a huge unlock for me for leverage. Again, once again, I'm spending all my time working in the business, but if I could instead take less time, but invest it really hard into 5 key individuals, they can then grow their individual departments. And so now I have bi-weekly meetings with all of my leadership team. So this is an example of the bi-weekly meeting with my client success director. And so we do a personal check-in. We review their goals for the quarter. I review their calendar. I review their capacity. What's their team working on right now? Do we need to be working on that stuff? We share feedback. What do they think has been working well in their department? What do I think has been working well? What feedback do they have for me? Then we talk about development. Where do they see themselves in our company in the next 6 months? Is there any courses or programs or trainings I can buy for them that can help them be better at what they do? And obviously a conclusion, and we wrap it up. And so now I'm taking my time and I'm investing 30 minutes for every team leader every other week into them, but then they're going to be becoming an even better version of themselves. So that's a higher form of leverage, and they go out to their team, do the exact same thing. And now we're all kind of elevating at the same time. And previously I thought this was a waste of time. I thought, oh, no, let me focus on all this other stuff over here. But this was an example of me adding leverage to the business so that I could put in 30 minutes of time and this client success director can go out and add a few $100,000 in profit from back-end sales and ascensions and referrals from our clients from the work that I did. Another great example of leverage at the stage we're at right now on the business side is going to be dashboards, KPIs. I had a really great call with a client yesterday. She's crushing it, and she kept on saying, I don't think that my DM ads I was running, I had a 6x return on investment, but eventually they just stopped working. And I was like, oh, well, how do you know they stopped working? And she's like, I just felt like they weren't running as well as they used to. And then when I went inside of our ads manager, I saw that the frequency, which is how frequently someone sees the same ad, it was very, very low. It was like a 1.8. And typically you see ads stop working, they get ad fatigue around 4, 5, 6, 7. And so I said, well, do you have some kind of tracking system in place instead of you feeling that the ads don't work? And she's like, oh, no, I don't have a tracking system in place. I was like, well, then the true issue in your business is not that the ads aren't working, is that you don't know whether the ads are working or not. And so that was a huge unlock for her. And then we implemented our data tracking system inside of our business. We're helping her do that. And now she's going to be able to say with confidence whether the ads are working or not. And I told her, I bet you'll be able to 5x your business in the next 6 months because you have plenty of runway to go. You just keep on sabotaging yourself by turning the ads off. So we have done the same thing. As a form of leverage, let's say that every single person in my company, I'm just going to use really simple numbers because you saw I wasn't good at math. Let's say there's 10 people in my company and there's 40 hours a week. That means that I have 400 hours a week in order to invest into growing the company. Well, the reason why a tracking system or a dashboard is a form of leverage is because it can very quickly identify for you what is in the red and what needs to be worked on. So previously, anytime we had a client complain or I felt book calls was down or our close rate was down, we'd just immediately treat every problem as the exact same and we just go out and try to solve all of them. What I realized over time is that actually there's a priority in what problems you should solve. And a lot of times things that I think are problems are not actually problems when you zoom out and you can look at the month to date or the quarter to date or the year to date or the averages for those numbers. And so I started creating these dashboards, and now this is the first thing and really the only thing I look at every day as the CEO of the company. So instead of spending 400 hours a week and I'm doing 700 things right here and just and distracting the entire company, what I do now is I have 400 hours a week and I am putting it all towards, let's say, 2 major problems. And so we're going to get so much more out of that in solving that because I'm focusing the energy. I'm doing the right allocation of time, resources, and money. And the only way I can do that is by having a dashboard. So that's why this dashboard is another example of leverage. Now, before I end this with what I think is the number one source of leverage that you can do in your business today, I want to kind of talk about a few things that I've added leverage with in my personal life. This will be a moment, but I know a lot of people get value out of this. So I definitely have seen a correlation with how I feel and how I look and how much money I make and how I perform for the company. And previously, I was kind of just eating whatever I wanted to, and I had a rough idea of what my macros were, what they weren't. But because of my business, I do a lot of dinners out, and I meet with clients, and we travel all the time. And so it became really hard to kind of have this like perfect meal prep everywhere I go. So what did I do? Well, I created a ChatGPT that I now call Ravi's Nutritionist, and I gave it my macros I wanted to hit. Well, first I figured out what my macros were from asking ChatGPT, and then I gave ChatGPT the macros that I wanted to hit. And now I can say to ChatGPT, like for example, today, I have a client VIP day. So I'm having a client fly down here. We're going to spend 4 hours together, and then we're going to go to dinner afterwards. And whenever we go to dinner afterwards, obviously I'm not going to be able to eat one of my pre-planned meals. So when I woke up this morning, I said, hey, Ravi's Nutritionist, I'm going to dinner at the sushi restaurant. I want to backtrack, give me about 40% of my macros for that last meal, and tell me what I should order at a sushi restaurant to hit those exact macros. And then for the remaining 60%, you know what ingredients I have at my house. What should I eat? And so then it gave me 3 meals for me to eat. So that way, by the time I come to dinner, I'm not going to be out of my macros and gain weight and feel sluggish or whatever else it is because I'm using my nutritionist. And this is, going back to almost the very beginning, this is the best form of leverage out there. This is code. I am literally having ChatGPT. I can ask it a million questions. I don't have to pay it every question I ask it. I don't have to feel bad for asking it too many questions. I can ask stupid questions without being embarrassed. And so I created this ChatGPT for that exact same reason. Another example of personal leverage that I have is going to be hiring a house manager. So even to the point that I was making millions of dollars a year in profit, I was still doing really low leverage tasks like taking out the trash, doing my laundry, walking the dog, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I realized was, okay, what if I hired somebody and they did all of that stuff for me? Because I couldn't use software or code to do this stuff for me. So this is an example of I had to use one of the lower forms of leverage, but still leverage nonetheless. And so now I have a house manager. I pay her $25 an hour, and she works for, let's say, roughly 12 to 14 hours a week, right? And this was stuff that I was doing previously in my personal life. So I forget how much I end up paying her. You can do the math between these two things here, but let's say for easy numbers, somewhere between $1,000 or $2,000. And by paying her that money, I'm able to legitimately get back 40 hours a month to either invest back into more of my business stuff or just do stuff that I like to do, like fly my plane or take my boat out or hang out with my fiance. And so I have an Asana board for this, and this is some of the stuff she does. She charges all of our devices, my Kindle, my electric toothbrush, my water pick. She stocks the groceries. She restocks the bathroom supplies. She buys my vitamins for me. She cleans my shoes. She replaces my bathroom kitchen towels. And so all these things that not only was I doing them previously, but I was kind of doing a half-assed job doing them because I didn't really want to do them. Now she comes in and she loves doing it. She leaves us notes and flowers and makes the toilet in that cute little origami thing as well. And so I feel like I live in a hotel now. I feel like I live this amazing life in my personal life because I delegated out and I was willing to invest and get that leverage back personally. And then the other form, now this is going to definitely piss some people off as well, but I recently just got engaged to the woman of my dreams, my fiance. And I would say that a partner is 100% a form of leverage, right? Now, before people go in the comments and get insane, I'm not saying that I literally proposed to this woman because I wanted to add more leverage in my life, but I'm saying that it is a form of leverage because we had a conversation and we agreed, look, she loves creating content and she has a little coaching program for women and she does decently well with that. But for her to catch up to the amount of money that I'm making, it's going to be almost impossible. And so I shouldn't say it's impossible, but it'll be difficult. And so instead of her trying to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week to try to eventually learn all the same lessons that I did, we both agreed. And she was the one that came to me with this for all of you haters in the comments. What if I just become the CEO of the household and you become the CEO and you say the CEO of the business? And so this has been really, really good for us because now all the additional stuff that we do, like traveling, planning trips around that stuff, my wardrobe, things that would have been a little bit harder to kind of delegate out, managing the house manager, managing our dog trainer, she now takes care of all of that. We host dinners at our house, usually 1 to 2 times a week with other entrepreneurs in Miami, and she's the one coordinating it, inviting the people over there, cooking the meals, cleaning up afterwards. And so I get all this time back that I don't have to spend in my personal life, but even more important that I can spend this incredibly amazing lifestyle that would almost be impossible to do if I was also trying to run a business at the same time. So I think that having a fiance or a significant other can be a massive, massive form of leverage if you're clear on the roles and responsibilities. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what the moment you've all been waiting for here is, what is the absolute best form of leverage? Why do you see dumber and lazier people than you making way more money than you do? Now, it's for a lot of the reasons I said previously, but some of that stuff requires work and that requires investment. But there is a form of leverage right now that I think is the greatest opportunity that we've ever seen, that people are kind of figuring it out, and everyday people are figuring it out. And as an example of this, here's Bad Bobby, which is the girl who was like that Catch Me Outside girl from Dr. Phil. Everybody made fun of her. And a lot of people said that she was dumb. And a lot of people said that she was lazy because she was arguing with her mom about certain things about, I don't know, taking the trash out. I never watched the episode. Well, guess what? In 2 years, she made $57 million with the vast majority of it, let's say 90% of it, being profit as a one-man business. When in the history of mankind have you ever heard of that thing happening? And there's all these other females that I see that are making millions of dollars a month with their OnlyFans accounts. Now, I'm using OnlyFans. I know plenty of people on here have no intention of creating OnlyFans, and you guys might even hate OnlyFans. But even if you hate it, you can take lessons from it. And so what's the lesson here? Well, she is using, and all of these people that are kind of, quote, lazy and stupid, are using the absolute highest form of leverage, and that's media. It's a personal brand, because they can sit in a room by themselves like I am here and film something on their phone, and it can reach millions of people with absolutely no cost to them. right? No additional work. So the greatest thing about media as well is that the media itself is also the product. So what she's using to advertise the media, like scandalous photos of her, is also what's, I'm sure, is inside of her OnlyFans account as well, right? And so this is what most people aren't, they're still focused on, let me build this advertising agency and let me do this done for you services that requires all this labor and all this time. And oh, I'm making $100,000 a month, but I'm taking home $20,000. I'm working 80 hours a week. And then you have these people like this that are literally working, let's say 2 hours a week, and they're making $25 million a year. So that should first piss you off a little bit, because it did piss me off a little bit. And then we should look to learn from it. Okay. And if you look at all the people you know making the most amount of money, profit, take home with the least amount of work, they're all people that are leveraging media. And for us, it's been the exact same thing. When I started going deeper into investing into media and becoming almost like a one-person media company, in the past few months, this year specifically, our business has exploded. Last month was our most profitable month all year in the business. And at the same time, I spent 20 days traveling to speak at an event in Dallas, speak at an event in Dubai, and go on a safari with some of my friends in South Africa. So I barely worked at all. And it was the highest profit month we ever had. Why? Because one of the main things, other than what I talked about earlier, was because of the content that I'm putting out there that's attracting our dream clients. So this is an example from my attribution software. And you can see inside of this here, these are two different screenshots from 2 different days, but these are booked calls. This one came from YouTube. This one came from YouTube. This one came from YouTube. This one came from YouTube, 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 YouTube. All these are in the same day. And then you see Instagram, Instagram, right? And these aren't brokies, okay? I'm talking about people earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a month looking for our help. They're saying, I want your help. On a scale of 1 to 4, how we rate our booked calls, this is a 3 for us, okay? So these people are coming in, they're qualified, they know what I want, and they really are interested in working with us. And I have spent over $5 million in paid advertising, and I've never been more profitable and had it easier to close clients than I do through media. But, you know, the obvious thing is like, okay, Ravi, let's create more media. But the problem that I learned was that in the past 4 years as I've been creating content, I put out 1,400 videos, and I have about 94,000 subscribers. It's not bad because I make really niche specific content. And I used to say, okay, well, I just make niche specific content, so it doesn't really matter. I don't care too much about the views. And so I would just put out 3 videos every single week, every week until the end for 4 years. And it worked. We were getting sales. But what I realized was saying that the views don't matter is true. But at the same time, if you can make content that you absolutely know will bring you clients instead of the things that get you the most views, and then you can package it up correctly so that it gets a lot of views, well, then it becomes a real client acquisition system for you. And the best part is that I don't have to have a team of media buyers, and I don't have to create ad creatives every single week, and I don't have to worry if we're spending money, not spending money. We just get qualified book calls on the calendar every single day. And what I realized as your form of leverage here, what is the lesson here, is that the highest form of leverage in media, so media is a form of leverage, using media in itself, but the highest form of leverage is the quality of the content, is investing into, instead of making 3 videos a week, you make 2 videos a week, but you do the research beforehand to package it well and understand what makes a good video, and then you can put it out there. And now you're getting the videos that the exact same content that I would have made previously that would have gotten 2,000-3,000 views are now getting 5, 10, 15 times that. And this is an example of 2 of the most recent videos that I did here. You can see these graphs of, if you can kind of see a little bit here, this little gray bar on the bottom is what my average views are, and this blue bar is where it actually is. So you can see these are literally 34,000 views more than usual. This I posted just yesterday, and it has 5.4 thousand more than usual, 3.5 times higher than usual. So these are all videos that I would have made previously, but I understood the next form of leverage, right? It's not just to create content, okay? So if you guys aren't creating content at all, start creating content. But then how do I add the quality to my content so that everything I post gets 10 times, 20 times the amount of views? Because that is a direct correlation. I will tell you right here, this video, we had our highest qualified book call week that we had all year when this video was published, okay? So there is a direct correlation, once you understand this, between views and calls if you're making the right videos. Another example is Instagram. For over 4 years, I've been posting 3 reels every single day, every day on Instagram. I've gone all the way from spending $40,000 a month in payroll to my media team to now less than $5,000 a month in payroll for my media team. And I've learned quite a lot of lessons along the way. So I put in the work. I did the 60 hours a week creating content every single day. Like I told told you. But the problem was I was only getting 2,000-3,000 views. And I thought that I was shadow banned and all of these excuses, blah, blah, blah. But instead, once I learned about leverage, once again, I said, well, how can I put the same amount of work in or even less, but get 10 times the result? Well, I need the video to be picked up in the algorithm. So I started investing more time, energy, and effort into understanding the algorithm and packaging videos and topics and all this stuff. And we hit over 1 million views in 30 days, all with qualified videos of people that are potentially going to work with me. 0% of them were from ads. And you can see that we went from 1,000 or 2,000 views a video to 5,200, 84,000, 6,700, 8,400, 81,000, 5,100, 25,000, 5,100, 6,700. So remember, I'm still posting 3 reels a day, but now I'm focused more on the next form of leverage, which is more quality content, which can have a way higher chance of actually bringing in clients for our business. And just to kind of drive this point home for you, Q4 was the first month that I went all in on content and media. I recognize this, just like I recognized earlier on in the advertising agency when I got the call center and when I only worked with people that were running ads originally. I recognize that this is the next thing that's going to take our business next level. And we went from our average close rate year to date, it's about 34%, to Q4 so far, we're at a 57% close rate, which is a 70% increase from our close rate previously. All we did was focus on the quality of the content and only focus on media. And so this is why this is actually the most profitable month in our business, or last month, October, was the profitable month in our business. And we're not alone. To give you another example here, I had a one-on-one call with one of our clients yesterday who we're installing a media system for. And he was telling me that within, I think, 2 weeks of starting to post content, he ran the numbers, and their average sales cycle from ads, which was how they were originally acquiring most of their clients, was 36 days. Okay, which is pretty average, honestly, in the high ticket world. Their average sales cycle from YouTube, 4.8 days. Okay, so 1/6 as long as an ad to get a client. 6 times faster, if you want to hear it a different way, to get a client from doing the right videos on YouTube and focusing on the most leveraged thing that he could do, which is going to be content. And another element that he shared on here, this is just a screenshot from my story, was that he also was getting paid 6 times faster because he was getting all the money up front than he was previously, where that had to do it over a multiple payment plan installment. So if you understand the power of what's going on with content and you want our help, instead of you having to guess and do what I did, which was 4 years of just creating content to create content, and instead just leverage our media systems so that you can close more clients, make more profit, become an industry leader, I recommend going down below and checking out the video where I actually break down our entire media system end to end, and then I show you how we can actually install it with you inside of your business. Okay, so if you've gotten value out of this video so far, you're a business owner, you know you need to apply leverage, you know you need to go to the next level, and you're kind of recognizing the writing on the wall that if you don't have a personal brand, you're going to be left behind in today's day and age. Go below this video right now, book a call to speak with us, and let me know in the comments down below any questions you have and if you enjoyed this video.